Hello, my name is Adam, and I review things on a quest to become the most prolific reviewer of all time. So, recently I was on a bit of a Betty Davis kick and I watched a bunch of her movies. And you can't watch Betty Davis without being a little bit interested in her feud with Joan Crawford. So then I was watching a bit of Joan Crawford movies. And then you can't be really interested in Joan Crawford without thinking about or hearing about this movie called Mummy Dearest from 1981, starring Faye Dunaway and a child actress who I'm not going to mention because she doesn't actually do that great of a job. Faye Dunaway, does she do a great job? She does a job, that's for sure. But a little bit of context. So the book, Mummy Dearest, was written by Christina Crawford, and it details the abusive relationship that she had with her mother, Joan Crawford. Now, Joan Crawford had adopted her in the late 30s after a series of miscarriages. I think that she had four. It's mentioned in the film, and she had been married three times, so adoption agencies were not really going to give her a child. So she went through back channels and she adopted eventually four children. But the movie only talks about two children. And so towards the end of her life, Joan's life, Cindy Crawford was writing this book. Not Cindy Crawford? Christina, not Cindy. Sorry, that's a different Crawford. That would be an interesting twist. No, not Cindy Crawford. Christina Crawford was writing this book about her relationship with her mother. And then it was produced by someone who was dating Christina and somebody who was dating Faye Dunaway. And Christina has distanced herself from the movie because she believes that it's a grotesque representation of her mother. And although her mother was abusive, she wasn't anything like what's portrayed in the film. So there's one good thing about the film, which when you hear me say it, you're going to be like, that's the thing that you think is good about the film. The film is really good at showing you what a movie star's life would be like in the 1930s and 1940s. So it's elegant, but apart from the size and space of the places that she lives, there's not a lot of things that we would consider modern conveniences. And the first shot is this lovely shot of, it looks to be like a vintage alarm clock from that period. And so this would be about, I don't know, 40 years after the clock was made. And you can tell that the clock is about 40 years old, which is the problem with using vintage props in a movie like this, because everything would have been new at the time. But you can't really make a prop like that because it has a certain design aesthetic. It was just a beautiful, beautiful clock. And the clothing is wonderful, and all of those little details about the set dressing are very, very accurate. About the actual movie, so the movie focuses heavily on Faye Dunaway's performance as Joan Crawford, and there's a debate about whether it's camp or not. It's 100% camp. So camp, I think, I'm not like an expert in camp, but I would say my definition of camp is when something goes too far in one extreme. So it's trying to be tragic or moving or whatever, and then it just becomes a bit grotesque. And that's what makes it camp. And in this particular instance, the whole way that Crawford's character is portrayed is so over the top. they have this like lovely opening sequence where she's doing her beauty routine, and you can see that like it does make sense for Crawford's character because she was kind of vain, because she got her start as being a very attractive movie star, so she wanted to keep that as long as possible. So that makes sense, but the job that they do with the makeup is really quite what's the word? It's not great. It's horrendous. um, because, and this is going to sound weird, but eyebrows go through this sort of fashion, and Joan Crawford had very unique eyebrows, which were larger than some of her contemporaries, like Betty Davis. But it looks like Faye Dunaway didn't want to have eyebrows like that, so her eyebrows are painted in that like manner, and you can tell that it's makeup and paint and not her actual eyebrows. And it's like Crawford's those were really Crawford's eyebrows. So it's just a small thing, but it just looks so horrible. It's like you're trying to go for Crawford's look, but maybe skip that part if you don't want to do it naturally because it's going to look ridiculous, and it does look ridiculous. And then there's the scene with the hanger, and the problem I think at why it doesn't work as a movie is because I believe Christina Crawford did have an abusive mother, because it makes sense that her mother was abusive because she was a very driven woman. And this is the 1930s we're talking about, right? Like, the standard of parenting in that time was probably default abusive, right? So I can believe that she was hit, she was verbally abused by her mom. I completely believe it. But the thing about the movie is that it makes this sort of violence and verbal abuse completely unbelievable. There's a scene where this is the most famous scene. Well, there's a couple of famous scenes. One is when Crawford is in the boardroom of Pepsi, and she just kind of that's actually a good scene. She bowls through them like they're inconsequential personalities because they were. But the more famous scene is the wire coat hanger scene, and or clothes hanger scene. So basically, Crawford at night, she's going through her daughter's closet, and she sees that a $300 dress has been hung up with a wire coat hanger, clothes hanger, and she's like, this is going to destroy the dress. So she goes on this like rant, and she like wakes the daughter up, and she starts beating her with the clothes hanger. And then she's beating her, and she's like whacking her, and I'm thinking, would that actually hurt? I don't think it would, actually. She's whacking her bottom with a wire clothes hanger, and her bottom is covered with like pajamas and stuff. So I don't think it would hurt that much. But that's not the problem. And then like there's this scene where she throws cleaning powder at her, and basically her mom says, clean it up, and Christina says, how? And Joanna says, you're just going to have to figure it out. So the problem with the scene is that it's way over the top, but also there's no context, right? There's no scene of her talking to Christina about the importance of not hanging clothes on wire clothes hangers. And it's also weird because if it was so important not to hang clothes on wire clothes hangers, where did she get the wire clothes hanger in the first place? It's not, she's like 6. She's not going to go to the store and buy one for herself. That means it was in the house. So there is some kind of context that's lacking to this weird, over the top scene. And I think, unfortunately, that's the level that Dunaway is portraying Joan Crawford at. And I think that Faye Dunaway was a person who had, like, as an actress, she had, like, people thought that she was really great, that she was going to be one of these big stars like Meryl Streep is today. I think people thought Faye Dunaway would be like this, but you see her performance in this and you realize that no, it's all cliche. It's over the top. It's yelling. And Dunaway said that this performance may have set her career back a lot. And I can see that. I can see that because, one, it's way over the top. It's a caricature. It's grotesque. It's, it's everything bad about overacting. It's entertaining, sure, but it doesn't make the movie good. That's the one thing. And the second thing is, like, Joan Crawford was an interesting, charismatic person, right? And in the movie, Faye Dunaway's version is just basically like, you have to love me because I'm a movie star. And all of the affection that she gets is because she's a movie star, but she looks very grotesque, right? But if you actually look at Joan Crawford's movies, she has this, like, charisma, this, like, wonderful, her face just, I mean, the camera eats up her face, and she, not the best actress, but much better than somebody like Faye Dunaway, because her responses are measured. Everything that she did was measured to the goal of what she wanted to achieve. And you look at her performances in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and Mildred Pierce, and her highs are not as high as they are in this movie. I mean, like, emotional intensities are not as high as they are portrayed in this movie. She's not hysterical. And I think that the abuse that she would have given to Christina would be something like, I think that she would be very calm about it. She wouldn't be yelling about it. She wouldn't be making a scene about it. It would be very calculated, like, you did this thing wrong according to my, worldview, and you need to be punished. And I will punish you in this way. And for me, this is not abuse. This is for you because you need to learn that life is hard, whatever. So I don't buy Joan Crawford in this movie. And I think that's what Christina was talking about. Like, it is grotesque, and it doesn't reflect who Joan Crawford was as a person. And I think somebody who did Joan Crawford much better is in the series that I recently reviewed as well, called Feud. And I think her name is Jessica Tandy, maybe. I think I'm confusing Jessica Tandy with the character from Murder, She Wrote. Or maybe that's the same, no, it's not the same actress. But anyway, her last name is Tandy, I believe. You can check it out in Feud, the TV series, the first season, by Ryan Murphy. And the reason why that performance is so much better is because she portrays Joan as having flaws, but also being this incredibly charming person. This person who could be very manipulative if she wanted to be. I mean, that series has some problems as well, connected to the infantilization of the Davis and Crawford characters, because they both were quite shrewd businesswomen. But yeah, it's night and day better than this. The only reason to watch Mommie Dearest is to see, like, this crazy train wreck of a movie. It does verge on the so bad it's good good territory, but not by much. It's a really bad film. And I think that the other thing, which, I mean, it makes sense because she's a child actress, but Christina Crawford, she was not an actress of the stature of Joan Crawford, but she did have a career for like 10, 12 years as an actress. So she must have been a bit better than what she's portrayed in this movie, because the child actress who's portraying Christina Crawford doesn't do a very good job. And when she's older, it's also bad. And there's like this scene where she's doing Antigone, and it's supposed to be like, oh, look how much talent I have, and there's no talent there. It's really, really quite bad. So that is also an unbelievable thing. And the other weird thing about the movie is the ending of the movie. So, another weird thing is that Crawford had four children, a set of twins, and the twins are not mentioned in this movie whatsoever, and that's because they really didn't like this book, right? They hated the book, they thought that it misrepresented their mother. And in the Feud series that I mentioned, um, there is like, and this is connected to the thing that doesn't make any sense about this movie. In the Feud series, um, Joan Crawford is dying, right? And she is talking to her children, and she is talking to the twins, and the twins are talking about the book, and there's like hints that Joan's upbringing was a bit, or like upbringing of them was a bit strict, but they're like, oh, I can't believe Christina would do this. It doesn't make any sense. And Joan says, well, you have to understand, like, I was in a different period of my life when I had her than when I had you. So when I had her, I was like very busy. I wasn't paying much attention. So basically, Joan, in that sense, was saying that it is possible what was mentioned um, in Christina Crawford's book. So anyway, back to the movie. The movie makes it like, so Joan Crawford dies, and Christina and her brother Christopher get nothing from the will, which is true. They didn't get anything from the will. And there's a line that says, like, why you didn't get anything from the will. And the last lines of the movie, Christopher says, oh, she always has to have the last word. And then Christina Crawford's character says, will she have the last word? And that's the last line of the movie. Like, this movie is the last word on Joan Crawford, which doesn't make any sense, because the book was being prepared to be published when Joan Crawford was dying, and Joan Crawford actually saw the book before it was published. So the movie makes it like Christina wrote the book, and thus this movie, as revenge for not getting any money for being disinherited from her mother, which kind of throws out the whole like abuse angle of Joan Crawford if you just think that it's about revenge. And the book was not, maybe it was about revenge, but it wasn't like she didn't get money and then she wrote the book. She wrote the book and then she didn't get any money. And I don't know, to be a bit generous to Joan Crawford, it may have been revenge because of this book, but then why not give Christopher any money? And I think like the thing is, I don't think that Joan Crawford actually had that much money when she left, because eventually, when she died, because eventually they reached an out-of-court settlement, and Christopher and Joan and Christina Crawford got $50,000 together, so $25,000 each in the 90s, I guess. So a bit more money than it is now, but that's not like millions of dollars or anything. So maybe Joan Crawford was just like, I'm not giving you money because I don't actually have that much money, which is quite possible. Yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else to say about this movie? I think the story of the movie is much more interesting than the movie, but if you've seen the movie, let me know what you think. There is a whole idea that this movie and whatever happened to Baby Jane influenced drag culture. And that's kind of fascinating. I think I'd like to know more about that, but I don't at the moment. So if you know anything, maybe put it in the comment section. All right. So if you like my reviewing style, please like and subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get to 200 subscribers by the end of January, and I believe I have 179 at the time of this recording. So it's completely possible. All right, and if you are listening on Spotify, please give me a follow. Thank you. Bye-bye.